Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, covering monuments. Also, the V team takes a look at an ethics meltdown. And the people of Alabama have an offer for Luther Strange.
Senator, you can have my answer now if you like. My offer is this. Nothing.
Not even a golf cart? A tennis racket? A free trip to Mountain Brook with a stopover at the Wabaho? Nothing? All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V team.
Hi.
Good morning.
Look who we've got.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
All the way back from D.C.
Straight
Happy
from
to
the
be back.
swamp.
Yep. No.
Well, how was your
Humid
time
up there too?
How was your time up there?
It was great. Got a lot of experience. Got to see some cool people. But
Now,
glad
you
to be
work
back.
for the CBS morning show?
CBS this morning.
Delivering coffee,
I did not deliver any coffee.
Well, that's not what Josh said, but
Well,
said
I
he
don't really
was-
care what Josh said.
he said he was taking out the waste paper baskets on a daily basis. So,
You know, Josh likes to pick on me just like he likes to pick on everybody else. And I
Yes.
just,
No,
you know.
you especially.
oh, well, there you go.
You get the banner on that one.
Yeah, Trump thinks he gets it all in these columns, but really, Josh,
No,
only
it's,
mean to me.
it's all about you.
It's all me.
It's always been about you. Judge Roy Moore, one of your favorite guys, Jack, came out on top, 40%, broke his ceiling. Luther came in at 30%, and then there were those also ran.
Yeah, you're right. I'm done with him when he rode the horse to the polls. I'm sorry. I was really a little done with him before that, but that really put the icing on the cake.
You didn't like the
it's
horse?
it's gonna be a spirited race. Let me tell you
Yeah.
something.
He always rides a
And
horse to the.
I know he always does. That's wonderful. Great, Roy. Keep riding, Roy Rogers. What? I wonder what Trump's going to do, because the tweet the morning after the primary was kind of congratulating both Roy Moore and Luther Strange. So we'll see how involved he gets in this deal.
Well, I mean, Chip, I think one of the revealing things is then he came back and he talked about how, Luther Strange, the second place candidate, was the one he endorsed. And that doesn't look good for Trump.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And if you look at the statement from the Senate leadership, when they put that out, and again, it was like they didn't even acknowledge that Roy Moore had beat him by as many percentage points as he did. And it's almost astounding, to see Roy Moore's political chops back again. You haven't seen that since he ran for Chief Justice, and this campaign is totally different. The ads that we've seen from him are very well done. He has just proven himself to be a very good campaigner.
Susan, when Roy Moore runs and really runs, he rarely loses. I don't know if he's ever lost when because he's a heck of a retail politician.
He really is. I mean, Roy's from the days of him. He campaigns in the styles of when people used to go and get on the back of trucks and talk to the masses, in the town square. I mean, and people in Alabama relate to that. They really like that. I mean, he won 60 out of 67 counties.
Yeah, I mean, Mo Brooks won 2, and Luther won the big ones. I think a lot of people, and Chip, you might want to address this or not, but I think a lot of people don't understand that Roy Moore, for all his conservative and hard line on personal issues or issues like that, he is really a populist. I mean, he is a populist in the style of the great Southern politicians. I mean, he cares about the people.
I would agree with that. I would not say that I would agree with him, like you said, on those personal issues, but he is a candidate that appeals to a lot of people in Alabama, and that's evident by the fact that he was the only Republican candidate of the main three that had a majority approval with Republicans. Luther Strange had a net negative favorability, and it's really hard to win a primary when most Republicans have a negative favorability of you.
Jack,
and Roy Moore is he's up there.
You know more about primary politics in the Republican Party probably than anybody in the state. But how do you see this coming down? You've got two polarizing figures.
You do. You do. You know, you had a tough race. You had Luther outspending Roy probably 10-1.
Yeah.
And he gets 30% of the vote. I mean, that's 32%, whatever. That's not real impressive.
No.
When you have millions spent on your behalf, trashing the other candidates, and then some promoting you, Luther's a terrible politician. You know why? He doesn't have any conviction.
That's right.
No, and the ads,
No conviction, no backbone. He doesn't want to rock the boat. He's terribly recused from major cases in Alabama. He let the guy who was investigating him appoint him. He's terrible.
Yeah, and the ads that he did, I don't know what production house were doing those ads, but they were terrible.
They were. Like they'd never
terrible.
set foot in Alabama.
The one that we had on the show last week for Roy Moore, that was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it was filled with a lot of hate, some people thought, but it worked.
My
It was
favorite
effective.
ad was the silencer ad, putting the silencer on the
yeah,
gun.
yeah, yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
think
that was
silencers are legal,
strange.
are they?
Well, I think
you can get a special.
Can you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
okay.
can get a special exception for those.
You know, I want to change off this subject, but I do want to mention that former U.S. Attorney Doug Jones did win in a landslide, Chip.
Yeah.
And there are people who believe there's a narrow but a path where he might take it if it's Roy Moore.
You know, I think it's interesting. If you look at Lee County and Tuscaloosa County, Doug Jones finished in the primary with nearly the same amount of votes that Luther Strange did in Lee County and Roy Moore did in Tuscaloosa. And I'm not really one that thinks that he has a real, clear path, but you never know.
Yeah.
Honestly, in Alabama politics, what's going to happen?
Well, he's a yellow dog. I mean, he's not.
And he has this amazing background of, prosecuting civil rights violations and everything.
16th Street Baptist
Yeah.
Church.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
never know.
I can't say may the best man win. I think they're all, have their good qualities, their bad qualities, but, one of them is going to be the U.S. Senator from Alabama, and we'll see what happens after that. We've got a few minutes. I want to cover this part. This week, the Ethics Commission met. They had postponed the meeting until after the primary. And one of the things we were told they were going to address, Susan, is this ethics complaint, or this complaint filed by Secretary of State John Merrill, accusing that indicates that Luther Strange may have violated some fair campaign practice
Yeah, and it's a
acts.
situation that's very much like the Bentley situation, where he was raising money outside the campaign window. There's some squishiness about if he was paying people for his senatorial campaign out of his AG's account. So this is something that really needs to be looked at. But the fact they pushed it past the primary, they didn't even whisper his name during that meeting.
Yeah, and Jack, it looks like now they'll push it out way past September. So the voters will go to the polls not knowing whether Luther Strange has committed any crimes.
Well, it's the same crime that Robert Bentley committed that got him thrown out of office. So, all right, Ethics Commission, where are you? I think those guys over there are jokes.
Well, this week...
Most of them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, when Tankersley, that was his last meeting, Dr. Stuart Tankersley, about the last honest guy on that commission. I
tell you, I really want to see Dick Brubaker on that commission. I think he's the guy that'll rock the boat. And did a little research and found out that Tankersley's seat is the one appointed by the governor.
So, and she could appoint...
She can appoint Dick Brubaker if she wants to.
He'd be a tough one.
That'd be good, and I don't want him to mess with Tom Albritton. I think Tom is trying to do the right thing.
And they're trying to mess with him.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We're going to pick it up on the next segment. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis. Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, I want to pick up where we left off with Stuart Tankersley leaving. You're suggesting that they bring in Dick Brubaker.
I am, because there's not, I don't trust the remaining people there on the commission, simply because, right down to the fact that they changed the rules this last week to make it easier to fire Albritton, because Albritton doesn't, he's just not their dog. He doesn't do exactly what they say.
Is that
he
their,
pushes back.
is that an appointment by the governor?
Well, no,
Well,
I mean...
the Brubaker appointment would be
Right,
by
but
the
I
governor.
mean the executive director.
He can be fired by that gang of four.
Yeah,
Well, there's a
5.
gang of 3 we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Butch
those are-
Ellis and Fielding and
Charlie Price.
I just really
Price.
think getting somebody
They're
like
wretched.
Dick Brubaker in there to hold their feet to the fire, to make them come up with rules and stick to those rules is very, very important.
Has anybody
If we're
talked to
gonna
Brubaker? Does he want it?
I think there's been some people talking to him.
Well, I think he'd be great, but I just think he would
I think
lose his mind.
I think it was offered
hope he
to him,
would.
and he just wasn't sure he wanted to take it because he would have to leave his Senate seat. But he's not running anyway, and somebody's going to have to hold these clowns in line.
Yeah, I think Dick Brubaker would be a good person for that because he just doesn't really care what anybody
No,
thinks.
he doesn't,
The only
no.
person who he cares about is himself,
Or
in a good way.
Paul
He
And
does.
the same.
He is principled.
Yeah.
And he does what he wants. And we saw that with the judicial override stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a party. He's not
Well, and if they get this other person on there that they were talking about getting, it'll be all lawyers, no regular folks on there, which I think is a problem. This week they did do one thing right. They told former acting finance director Bill Newton that he could not get an exception and lobby outside the 2-year window, Susan.
Yes, they did. Finally, they did something right. He wanted to be able to, do some lobbying and say that this wasn't doing lobbying work, which gets him around the revolving door of 2 years. Finally, the Ethics Commission did something right and said, no, this is lobbying, so you can't do this.
Now, your buddy Butch Ellis, he didn't think that was a good idea.
Well, good for you, Butch.
Butch, anyway, I think the problem is that a lot of these guys, they want the ethics laws to be a suggestion, Jack.
No, I know. They don't care. I think that's some of Mark White's influence on them, too.
We hear that Steve Marshall, after is looking at bringing the ethics package that was written by Matt Hart and the gang, he's thinking about bringing that back up for legislators, and they've got to put some of these things that Tankersley had in there. There have to be rules. There have to be a way to fire the commissioners. There is no way. They don't have any rules that they actually follow that are clear. They didn't even bring up old business this last week
On
because
purpose.
Tankersley wanted to talk about bringing up the fact that we needed rules.
I mean, these are like teenagers you've given the honor system to, and they violated the honor system, and now they have to be put back under being grounded. They have to have somebody's got to have some recourse to hold their feet to the fire.
No.
They need to
adult
have
supervision.
some kind of time constraint on some. I realize that you can't, just make an investigation happen like that if you have to, but there needs to be something because it's not fair to voters that there are 2 ethics complaints against Luther Strange and nobody knows if they're
They've
true
had
or it's not.
Merrills since June.
Yeah, and it honestly, it's not fair to Luther Strange either because they could be,
Nothing, yeah.
Yeah. And something needs to happen there.
Well, I agree. We reported it last week. We stand by our reporting, and I think we'll know very soon. Governor Kay Ivey, Jack, is going to run for a full term in her own right, and I think she will be formidable. I mean, they've got to convince people that they should fire her, and I don't think that's
Well, there's no
that easy.
compelling reason to not have her elected to a full term yet. There could be.
Sure.
We could find some things out. But right now, on the surface, she's not made any enemies so far. She's not rocked the way she talks about steady ship. Well, she hadn't rocked it at all. So she's going to be hard to beat.
And she got rid of all those commissions that were out there. She's looking at, she got the judicial override, she signed that. I mean, she's made some really good steps so far.
She has, in a couple of months into her term, you really saw a turn when she banned lobbyists from task forces, set new rules about lobbyists, the appointments to these boards, and then, like you said, disbanding all those. And then the laws she did choose to sign. There were a couple there, the
Yeah.
Confederate monuments, the adoption. But I do think those things are not going to hurt her in a general election in Alabama.
And something I've seen too, I'm sorry, she signed an executive order, I believe it was this last week, something as simple as renumbering all the executive orders. They had it out in some confusing, random way that it was assigned to each governor, the way they would number their executive orders. And so she's going in and going, basic house cleaning, going, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, well,
let's get the house in
you would
order.
expect her to bring some. From my standpoint, she made some very serious staffing picks. She is going to have to convince at least the people inside Montgomery that she is not Bob Riley's person, because Jack, that is out there, and she did have a lot of Riley folks coming into the organization.
Well, we can't hold her feet to the fire for that yet,
No.
and we couldn't prove it even if we looked at it. We don't know how close they are.
Right.
But we'll see how it goes. But she has some formidable opposition as well.
Yeah, and it depends on how many of them really want to take her on. Before we're going to go to another break, I want to talk about the fact that this week, and Chip, you broke the story that, and Jack, they were on your television show as well. Radio show. Y'all broke the story,
Thursday,
and Chip followed it on Thursday, saying that Twinkle Cavanaugh, PSC commissioner, will be running for lieutenant governor.
She will. She's decided to change from the gubernatorial race to that, and I think that it's because Governor Ivey's going to run for re-election. I don't think Ms. Cavanaugh wants to get into that fight. I don't think it would be good for the party if you have all of these major figures fighting over that nomination.
Well, I asked her point blank, why would you drop down? She said, there's not a compelling reason to get rid of Kay Ivey.
That's right. There's
She
not.
told me that morning when I talked to her on the phone.
You also have Del Marsh, who's said that he's not going to run for that exact same reason. He didn't say that, but it was fairly obvious from his statement that that's what it was. So we do know that she's running for re-election, and it seems like at least some of the Republicans don't want to fight her.
And now on the lieutenant governor side, Jack, you have Will Ainsworth, a very good, straight-laced guy, young guy. He's got plenty of money. And you have Mary Scott Hunter, who is embroiled in all this controversy. That investigation with the state school board.
That's going to be her undoing.
And that has gone to Matt Hart's division. We have been able to confirm that it is in the hands of the Special Prosecution Unit. Whatever they do with it, we don't know. We don't know that there was a crime, but it sure looks stinky.
And you have Rusty Glover, who's announced a long time ago he was going to run. So that'll be a very spirited race. And I don't think there's any reason to get ugly.
No, but I will say about Twinkle, she's got a lot of administrative experience that most of the rest of these guys don't have. So should something happen to the governor, and we have to take this into account again,
Sure.
because what happened with Bentley, she, I would think, would be able to step up into the gubernatorial seat and be just fine with it.
Well, it'd be interesting to have 1 and 2 be female and female.
Yes.
You know I'm all about that.
I know you are. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, very big controversy around Montgomery when the Capri Theater, which is an independent theater over in Cloverdale, refused to show a film called Atticus versus the Architect, which is a film about what happened to Don Siegelman, at least from a point of view, when he was convicted and sent to prison. That caused a big controversy. We are happy to announce today that APR and The V will be sponsoring that film at the Davis Theater on October 1st. Tickets will be on sale next week, I guess. But this is really, for us, Jack, this is more about the First Amendment and censorship. And I've never seen the film, but I like you, resented the fact that people were not allowed
Well,
to
I
see
had
it.
friends on that Capri board, and there were folks on both sides. And Laura Canary, Billy Canary's wife, who was a U.S. attorney, did not think that she was portrayed in a very favorable light. And as a Capri board member, she didn't want the film shown, and the board caved in. The Capri's never run from controversial films, and that's why people are upset. But I'm glad that you guys have gotten a place. At least if people want to go see it. I may not go see it. I might go see it, but I'd like to have the right to do that if somebody's willing to sponsor it, and I'm willing to pay for it.
Well, we're sponsoring it. It'll be that Sunday after. It'll be around 3 o'clock.
The screening's going to be at 3, yes.
But we'll put up real details on it. But the point is, again, Don Siegelman was charged with a crime. He was convicted. They say that this film shows all the stuff that they had claimed all along. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I want to see it.
Yeah, me too. I don't know how much new stuff is in it and what it is. I haven't read that much into it, but I do know that I would like to be able to see it. And I think people need to know if there's new information. And just to see that story told in, a compact way is good for people to understand, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what happened to Don Siegelman.
That's right. And there are a lot of people in the state who felt that he was wrongly charged, wrongly convicted. And there are people that look back at Federal Judge Fuller, who was a wife beater, and said that he was alleged. Oh, he didn't beat her? We just heard well, anyway, we heard he beat her. We don't know. 911.
That doesn't have anything to do with this movie.
Oh, that's right, it's illegal. Alleged. Anyway, but he did pound on Siegelman. I hear he doesn't look so hot. Of course, neither did his wife. I just think it's interesting that they wanted to censor it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it shows, you've got Abramoff in there. Now, Josh has seen the film. He saw it early this week and said, you've got a really compelling story from Abramoff about how he lobbied the money from the Choctaw into the election with Riley. This is a documentary, so you've got people that were involved, that were there, telling their part of the story for the viewer to make their decision.
Well, Jack, Josh, who interviewed Abramoff at some extent, he said he was actually surprised that Abramoff really even went further.
Yeah, he kind of opened up to Josh and indicated that a lot of what this movie says is true and verifiable. So
as far as the Choctaw involvement with the Christian right and with Bob Riley and helping him get elected and the Choctaws there, very, very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing the film. I'm not going to watch it until everybody else does, because I don't want to form an opinion outside of just viewing it with everybody at the Davis
Well, I had
Theater.
dinner a couple months ago with Governor Edwin Edwards, the former governor of Louisiana, who served in prison for taking a bribe.
Right.
Said he had met Don and he really liked.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, he was obviously a charming guy. He'd been in public service for a long, long time. But
Federal prison in Louisiana is a good place to make friends.
Yeah.
Is it? Well, I
And
wouldn't
to
know.
his defense, there's a lot
I'm
of
hoping
people.
to never find out.
There's a lot of people in Cloverdale that really thought a lot of him because he was such a nice guy. And I personally don't know him, and did a lot of business in that
Again,
community.
we're not going to sit by
No.
and let people's right to know, right to see, be denied. It's just a part of the fabric of our nation, and we're going to stand up to it. It's an Alabama value. If you don't like it, we're darn well going to see it.
That's
You know what I
right. You can, if you don't want to see it, then don't see it.
Yeah.
Just let those that want to.
We
be
got
able to do
about
it.
2.5 minutes left. Steve Marshall, the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, Chip, has sued the city of Birmingham, again, the mayor, all because they've allowed some type of fabric to be placed over the monuments.
I think
Confederate monument.
Mayor Bell ordered the monument to be covered with tarps and then I think later cardboard. So Steve Marshall has sued the city, saying that the law says that they can't be altered, which that frankly is what it says. And so he's suing the city over that. But I think, this goes into a larger conversation that we can't have in 2 minutes, but these Confederate monuments, that is a discussion that needs to take place civilly, and we need to, I think, take those things
I
down.
think it's been proven across the country it can't be done civilly.
No, I think you're
it's
right.
hard, but I think we need to try. Because a lot of these monuments were built in the 1960s during the height of the Jim Crow. I'm not exactly sure when that particular one was built, but...
Well, I think one of the things we talked about earlier, I mean, you look at the monument on the Capitol grounds. I mean, that was built, Jack, during, I guess, 1890s
something like
after...
that.
So, there may be some moratorium on some of this. Listen, I am not a black person or a person of color. I don't understand. I understand how they could be offensive. I'm also a Southerner of a certain age, and I also understand how people feel about those things. So for me, it's kind of a mixed bag of how do you do it.
But I mean, I have a resentment toward people trying to erase history. I'm sorry. It happened.
I think there's a difference between, having history and being able to see it in museums, but there's statues like the one in Lynn Park that's in a place of veneration, that's in a place of, in a very public place that everybody sees it. And, for a lot of people, all those monuments do is bring back the thought of how people were treated for hundreds of years in this country.
So is Black History Month. I mean, there's not a White History Month. Try that one on for size. I think there's a double standard. I don't want to run out and take down Martin Luther King Expressway signs.
Yeah, but
They're up there.
let's not have a moral equivalency between Martin Luther King Jr.
I'm
and
not.
Robert E. Lee.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with morals, Chip.
It
doesn't have
does.
anything to do with morals. It has to do with history. And what happened at a time 150 years ago, whenever, we can't, we can't erase that.
Why did the people wait until 1960 to start putting up
A lot of them were
Confederate
put up
monuments?
long before 1960.
A lot of them were, and there's a different conversation about that.
Right.
But a lot of them were put up in the 1960s.
All right, good points. We're going to leave it right there. I'm going to agree to disagree. You can guess with whom. Anyway, you've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us, because we watch them.